From secretive surveillance at sea to billion-dollar bets on defence tech, Steve Baxter shares how a Shark Tank investor and former soldier went from identifying opportunity at innovation conferences to backing startups shaping the future of national security and space. Welcome to the briefing room. Whether you're in defence, investing into the future, or simply curious about how great ideas become reality, this is your mission briefing. Let's get started. Steve, I thought we better get the founding story of Beaten Zone Ventures, venture partners. So take me back. Was it 21, 22 that you had an idea that you wanted to get into defence, in particular for venture?
Look, it was probably before then. I started re-engaging with defence back in 2016 when I was invited to a defence innovation thing called Army Innovation Day. It was at the Defence Academy in Canberra. They let me in the door, and you know, then I saw what I thought was James Bond's weapons lab, and I thought, how good is this, right? And the next thing I saw, people were taking pictures and they were putting on LinkedIn, and I'm like, so none of this is classified. I said, no, this is all just run of the mill. And I asked my handler at the time, I said, where's the other investors? And they said, we don't trust investors. And I said, well, I'm here. Right?
How did you get in?
They said, this is how the conversation went. So, we trust you. I said, seriously, you just met me, right? And so, it was good. They had a really good scheme to, bring industry in, state problems, get responses to those problems. That year was electronic warfare. It was drones and electronic warfare, and around GPS spoofing, actually, which is.
Do you think they had a level of trust because you were a soldier?
Oh yeah, and nothing else, because
right.
There was no other interaction. They had spooks looking at me. I've got no idea. I've got a great deal to hide, to be truthful. So, and that was good. That was a surreal day, because at the end of the day, I can't remember. It was like very senior chap in the army. It wasn't chief of army. It was deputy chief of army. Or someone got up there and said, before they did the whole judging thing, then with a room full of colonels and generals, said, well, maybe Steve should get up and say a few. Not being briefed on this at all. I went, right, okay. So I got up on the stage and thought. And at the end, I think it was 12 or so presented. They sort of down selected from about 30 down to about 12, and they had, a couple of tens, like about 10 or 20 million bucks. I can't remember what it was to grant out. And they sort of started trying to deliberate, and I just put my hand up and said, you just need to back them all. I mean, why do you think you're smart enough to know what's going to work? And they ended up backing them all.
Oh, that's good.
Well, I heard later on they backed them all. So I was excluded from that part after that, to be honest, which is, probably probity and federal government money. That makes a lot of sense. And then that got me in, and they were quite generous and invited me back a few times, and I had a lot of great discussions. I saw this opportunity along the way. I saw an opportunity of all these amazing sort of, in defence it's called capability, so they were creating capability, being funded through non-dilutive grants. So it's free government money, although free is in big inverted commas, to be honest, because a lot of strings come with that freeness.
Yep.
But they did well. They got stuff built. And then they get to the end of the process, and there's a bunch of really happy program officers and military officers who probably willing to sort of fight and use and fight with the equipment they made or the capability that was created. And then the army would say, that's great, but we don't want it. And so to fall into this, if you're familiar with the valley of death in commercialisation, in defence it's a chasm of death, because nothing gets out of a chasm. So I got tired of seeing all this great stuff literally die on the vine. And I thought, I'll go and do something about it. And that's what started the journey.
You've been an investor since when? 2012-ish?
Probably 2010 was my first one. After my exit from Pipe Networks. It would have been late 2010, early 2011.
And how many defence startups or defence technology had you been approached by for investment in that time?
Approached. Wasn't counting, to be honest. I mean, I was mostly just software. If it wasn't software, I wasn't interested.
But was it many? Was it common?
It'd be close to zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it might be a whole number, less than 2.
Yeah. Do you think that was because of the chasm of death, or it just never got out of defence?
I was just a software investor. Literally, I was
So you weren't interested, you weren't paying
if I got
attention.
pictured, I would have been, it's great, but you're selling something big and heavy. I don't care. I want things that are light, and I like software because it's easy to scale. When you get software right, it's zero cost to reproduce. And that's the nice thing about software from an economic sense. There's other distribution and other issues. Don't get me wrong, but it can be an amazingly scalable and awesomely wealth generating sort of business.
So when did it change? Where you started to shift and think, well, I might actually get involved with this?
I was on that journey, sort of trying to convince defence about the role private capital has to play in innovation. And it's really weird, because I shouldn't use the word capital on that, because everyone always goes, oh great, the government can spend less money if investors do it. I'm like, well, actually, the government should spend more. What private capital does, if you get the settings right, is it brings in dozens, if not scores, if not hundreds more eyeballs to look at the problem and to then use their own hurt money, because if they lose it, it hurts. To be quite blunt, if a public servant loses some money, it doesn't hurt them at all, right? So because that gets taxed from you and me, which then goes through 15 different departments to get down that way. So there's no ramifications to a public servant losing money. So, but to a private investor, they will make a much more intelligent decision, and they won't make the same mistake twice. But we need lots of those decisions, and they come in. They're not just trying to make something more efficient for X, Y, Z. Get more clicks or get more whatever it might be. It's literally to do a real world task, quite a visceral real world task as well. And it's very cool to hang around those people. Yeah.
So that was 22, and then you thought you would actually set up a fund, because previously you've invested in different ways.
It was 23 now, I think about it. It was 23, 2 years ago, 25, every 2 years. So I'd actually just decided the previous launched it. So I was actually sitting in Wichita, Kansas, as you do, basically failing a flight rating. First thing I failed since I was 17. That was a bit embarrassing. But anyway, that's another story for another podcast. And I was just going to launch the business as just literally a sleeve to what I was doing. So just an extra, how do I hang the shingle out? And so I had the name Beaten Zone from that. And I accidentally published the LinkedIn page when I shouldn't have. And so it came out there. So, it was in October, I want to say, of 22. Well,
that's a great way to launch.
Well, we're going now. That's it, men, go. And then we made the decision to do the fund. I brought Max on, who's still with us, as like a analyst for the defence space, and he'd been doing PE roll-ups in the sort of light industrial space, and defence is mostly light industrial, so it was a very, very good fit. And with Avalon, we saw the possibility. We did a quick market survey and thought, you could easily, responsibly deploy $60 million over 3 to 5 years, which is far more than our family had risk appetite for. And so we thought we'd raise the fund. And then that kicked off more employing, and we applied for all the various licensing and other bits and pieces that we had to do.
Yep. And how's it been raising a fund?
So
compared to other
I'd say
formats that you've done before in terms of investing?
Yeah, look, if in the world's in the midst of its worst venture capital drought ever, don't start a venture capital fund. Right?
Defence.
Oh, yeah. So December 2021, the zero interest rate environment in the US went away. Everyone thinks it was actually the invasion of Ukraine in Feb 22, but it wasn't. It was late 21. And things just stopped, just literally seized up. Yeah, so I did it anyway.
So what's the appetite been for investors to get involved?
So the target of potential investors, or LPs or limited partners, is quite limited in Australia. In Australia, most of the investment capital is locked away into superannuation funds, which is, great Australian success story, which it is. But most of those funds, almost all of those funds, have an ESG mandate, and ESG is this stupid thing we do to ourselves because we enjoy self-harm, but they preclude defence. Well, they say they don't. They preclude defence.
Yep.
So, if the fund doesn't itself, the little lefties they employ won't actually touch defence. So that's about 87% of capital in Australia. So then you're limited by the capital pool. So we've now got, that's 32 investors. So the reason I'm struggling with numbers is I talk to people. I've got 38 contacts I talk to. So in between all investors, there's 38 main people I talk to. I talk to people, not investors.
Yes.
So I don't quite have that number to front of mind. We've raised 12 point. We had another one coming yesterday, didn't we? We had one coming yesterday.
Yep.
How much is that for again? Add 200 grand or whatever it was. 12.6 now, I think. I want to say.
Yep.
So we want to get to 60. I doubt we will. I'm still thinking that we can. The fund's still open. We did our first close in February this year.
We did.
We've deployed six. No, well, we have 5 portfolio companies now. We've done 7-8 rounds into 5 portfolio companies, I want to say.
So talk me through some of those portfolio companies.
Yeah, look, the first one, I ended up meeting a chap called Will Crow at a ASPI, Australian Strategic Policy Institute conference in Sydney, called the Sydney Dialogues. We were on a panel together. In a recent magazine article, Will described it fantastically because they were just saying dumb stuff on this panel. And so as you know, Peter, I can't resist when someone says dumb stuff to basically say it back to them and make them sound make them sound like fools. And we just had a good time. And Will had similar views of the world to I did, and that view of the world is the fact that Australia is a very small market. If you want to succeed in defence, you have to export. So the Australian defence market's $35 billion US. The allied market is 1.2, growing 1.6 trillion dollars US. The US market's $1 trillion alone. So don't go here. If you want to be big, you have to be elsewhere. We had similar views. Anyone who's met Will Crow knows he's just a very gregarious, lovely chap. We got along. He's got great business too. And that led to our first investment eventually, about a year, a bit later, I want to say.
How do you explain what HEO does?
So HEO they're a non-Earth imaging business. So they have a system that allows you to reconfigure a spacecraft, a satellite. So that might be, let's say, an Earth sensing satellite. So as it orbits around the Earth, it sort of falls around the planet. and when it might be monitoring wheat crops in Australia. So when it's over Australia, it turns its cameras on. When it's not, it turns them off. What does it do for the other 11th, 12th of its orbit? So they turn the satellite around, with the owner's permission, obviously, and take pictures of other satellites. So they image other things in space. We never are, in this business, you never ask your customers what they do, how they use the capability. But given quite publicly the CIA is a co-investor, I'm pretty sure I know what they do. So great business, non-Earth imaging. They've since launched their own cameras as well as spare payloads. So they'll actually, hijack's the wrong word, piggyback, a camera on another payload.
Yep. So
they're getting their own cameras and they're proceeding from low Earth orbit. Crazy name. So HGO stands for high Earth orbit. Their business is mostly around low Earth orbit, which is dumb. And then they're trying to get into geostationary Earth orbit. So none of them, I hate the name, to be honest. But anyway.
It's easy to say. Easy to spell, easy to remember.
So, so they're trying to be the only company that can regularly image any object in geostationary orbit, which is 36,000 kilometres out, almost on demand. And demand will be within days because it's... I like talking about space, as you know. You're probably sick of hearing this one, Peter, but in space is well named because there's a lot of it. So between 200 kilometres and 350 kilometres, we call low Earth orbit, above the Earth's surface. As we all know, the volume of a sphere is 413 pi r cubed. If you do the maths on that, there's 192 billion cubic kilometres.
You love these numbers.
I love numbers. Numbers work every time. So space is well. I get often asked because there's 15,000 objects up there. I often get asked, do you think there'll be any collisions? No, I'm pretty sure they're all well separated. They've all got their own tens of thousands, if not millions of kilometres each, to be honest. So they'd have over 1 million cubic kilometres each they can occupy, believe it or not, which is not that much if you do the maths.
There's a lot of space.
It's not that much if you do the maths, actually. So, but anyway. So you imagine being 36,000 kilometres out in geostationary, or geostationary/geosynchronous, so slightly different orbits. So if they get that capability, game changer. Really will be. I mean, they have great capability right now. So loving the team. They've got a really well-developed presence in the US. Great investor support. So there's a lot to like about HEO.
And Arkeus. Speaking of,
so a second investment, Arkeus. Simon, John, and the crew from Melbourne. They have a business that merges hyperspectral sensing and autonomy. So they've got a very capable camera or sensor. It sees in roughly about over 2 dozen non-visible spectrums, and then can do a lot of processing at the edge on that device. So instead of sending back as much raster information, so like a picture, it will send back something saying, hey, there's a boat at this coordinate, because it recognises it's a boat, for example. And
so when is this needed? Like, give me a scenario where something like that would be needed.
We have a lot of unmanned platforms now as well. So this has been miniaturised at the same time. So it's built to work towards platforms that don't have pilots, so drones, essentially. So if you can actually see the world in 20 or so different spectrums, can you imagine presenting 20 pictures back to an operator? There's obviously information overload. So, I mean, you can overlay at the same time, but that doesn't always work with 20 separate overlays. It's not going to work. So how do you actually remove the load from the operator and allow them to queue, sort of saying it might be, hey, we've detected a boat here. Now an operator needs to look at it, if you know what I mean. But... So, this thinking of hyperspectral systems and hyperspectral spectrums. If you think about the movie The Predator vision has got all those weird ways you can see. Well, it's like that, right? Except far less Hollywood.
Yep.
Simon and John.
There's a lot of the Hollywood coming to life in real life right now, actually, in terms of what we've seen previously. Science
fiction is nothing more than a telling of the future, and that usually comes true, right?
Yep.
So I'm still looking forward to my flying cars, but they're getting closer. So they're going a lot of efficacy in the littoral space. That's the space between the land and the beach and the ocean. So they're in deep trials, and they've won a lot of grant work recently, and they're deep in trials with some important US government customers. We always do the whole duck shove and just say, it's just a US government customer, and you just say nothing else, right?
And then we've got Zendir.
Zendir.
The new name?
The new name, Zendir. So Zendir as a name, happens when you have two orbital scientists name a company. So Zendir is a concatenation of the orbital term zenith and nadir. So great, they have a system of digital twins for complex systems. So essentially they have a digital twin system to allow people to rehearse, operate and train who own constellations or fleets of spacecraft.
Yep.
So building a spacecraft's one thing, launching it's another. The operation rehearsing, because there's certain scenarios they may go through. Quite important as well. So they're a very important part of that chain. There was a recent report came out that said in the next 10 years the satellite count will go from 15,000 to 100,000.
Right.
Which is quite massive. So look, we like space. There's a lot of it. We think it's highly militarised because every military commander likes the high ground. You can't get any higher than space.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of opportunity out there for what we do and the mandate we have.
Yeah, we've actually got Chris coming on, so he'll be able to talk more about it in detail as well.
Good.
And some of the recent ones, Zeromark.
So Zeromark, was it our first US investment?
They
were pretty close. They came within days of each other. Yeah, anyway. First US investment, invested alongside with other investors such as Andreessen Horowitz and a great stable of US investors. This business has a great team, which is always important, but they have a capability that allows you to easily modify a soldier's personal weapon, so a rifle, to turn into a very effective drone killing weapon. So it improves the soldier's aim, improves the hit percentage for a soldier firing on a small, fast flying object, I suppose.
Yep,
so
right.
Which is very important in the modern context.
Mm. And our other US investment, Tiberius.
Tiberius, yeah. Now that's an awesome team, isn't it? That team is roll gold. So they do a variety of things, but the main thing that they're doing there is they've created they have a different view on a ramjet powered artillery shell. So it takes the range of artillery shell from about 30 kilometres up to about 150. Now the shell will land there with less effect. That's the polite word for bang. But yeah, so these aren't new. There's a Norwegian company called Nammo who do one, but these Tiberius have a different take on the ramjet shell, and we like looking what's occurring in especially the conflict in southeastern Europe and Ukraine against Russia. That long range strike is exceptionally important, and it doesn't take much effect to wreck somebody's day. You've just got to get it to them.
Mm. So with those companies in particular, we encourage a lot of our Australian investments to go straight to the States because, like you mentioned, the market there is bigger. But for these American-based investments, what's different in terms of the due diligence? How do we find them? As well, we've got a very comprehensive due diligence process. We've got Sean Singleton, based in the States.
Yes, maybe a US venture partner, Sean. Met him at an ASPE conference as well, funny enough, in Canberra. We were on a panel together. Got to stop meeting people on panels, don't I?
I think that's a great way to be meeting them.
It's not too bad, is it, actually?
The message is to get to the events.
I love Sean. If you listen to Sean, he's the politest man in the galaxy. We're going to try and say one curse word before he dies. Beaton's, we're a US market entry organisation. We're about finding great Australian capability and getting into the US market and helping it out there. So our US venture strategy is built around our venture fund structure. So in a venture fund structure, we legally have to deploy 80% of capital inside of Australia. Mm-hmm. 20% we can deploy outside of Australia if we choose. And we are choosing to do so, and we're choosing to do so in the US. And we're purposely doing that is because in Australia, we're a fund that doesn't mind backing things around the mandate around lethality. No other fund will touch these things, essentially. We don't want these things to be used, but we know that at least the Army's going to have to stock up a lot of these things very soon, given the insecurities in the world. As a result, though, there's no follow-on, there's no deeper capital pool in Australia. So we're early stage, we're restricted by a mandate in that early stage. So if we need to get into sort of later stage growth and other bits and pieces, that just doesn't exist in Australia. So where do we find that capital for our companies? Mm. So we've taken the decision to strategically deploy that 20% allocation into US deals with great US investors, with US investors on the cap table who have deeper pools of capital. So A16Z has their American Exceptionalism Fund. You have 8VC, you have NEA, a whole bunch of others over there who don't mind funding national security businesses at all. They have far fewer qualms than every other institutional investor in Australia. So where my version of it is we're out there buying friends in the US. Sean's version is it's the Queen Victoria strategy of marrying into the important families. Either way, they're great investments. It allows us to diversify in a geographic sense for our LPs, so they're not all concentrated to Australia, 80% concentrated, but not all concentrated to Australia, and it's still great investments, but gives us that ability to access those firms. The reality is with a US venture firm, you'll always get a meeting with the US venture firm. Do you meet the associate or do you meet the managing partner? If you invest with them, you meet the managing partner. Warm relationships are between 3 to 9 times more efficient at getting an outcome than cold relationships. So that's the strategy around that.
And how do Australians go with that strategy in terms of working with Americans?
Where
is our gaps?
Australians are uniformly hopeless. Australian founders we look down at camera, you're all uniformly hopeless. You need to get better. You're competing against Americans for the same capital. And Americans were born with a pitch deck in their hands, with an excess of confidence and an understanding of their markets. They really are. So you've got to play at the same game. You can complain about it all you want. If you complain you're losing, you just stop being a loser and start getting better. So, when you're talking to US investors or US stakeholders of any description, reply to the email straight away. Because the reality is if they're talking to other people in that sector and you take 12 days to get back, and the other guy takes 6 hours to get back, then guess who's getting the deal? So, and it just demonstrates that you're keen and eager.
Yep.
You don't need to be pulled by the nose ring to get in these. So you have to be aware of the ecosystem you're competing in, and their tech's not better, not necessarily better, I would say on average, but they're
hungrier.
They're very much hungrier, yeah. And as Sean always says, that the US Department of Defence does not buy the best technology. It buys the best technology it can get on contract. And to get on contract, you've got to be in their face all the time. Because if you're not there in their face all the time, your competitor is.
Yes.
So, and that's no different to real, and that's not different to most business, to be honest. So,
It just tends to be highlighted there. We run an event called Breach Point,
We do.
Which talks about this. And we have a panel of experts usually from the US. We have some founders and they talk about strategies of breaking into the US. And one of the key things, and you've mentioned it multiple times, and it's actually how you met Jake, it's how you met Sean, it's how you met Simon from HEO, is at events. Those key events. So,
Will from
sorry, Will. How important is it going to those events, doing your time, do the rounds, go to conferences?
You've just got to meet people, and unfortunately, you can't scale that.
No.
Well, you scale it by going to bigger events, I suppose. You don't know. You and I have a lot of history, Peter, going back about a decade and a half, or probably 13 years or something, I want to say. So, and how many events would you have run for the organisation?
Hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds. So, you wouldn't run again. Others you want to run 3 or 4 more times.
Yeah.
So you don't know what till you start. You don't know how good an event's going to be until you start. So you've just got to do the yards. It's, if you're a founder and running one of these companies, you don't like talking to people and going to events and meeting people, then I'd suggest go back to the public service. You're not going to survive in this business.
Yeah.
So you've got to get better at it. You've got to. I said you're competing against people who find this natural. We don't find natural in Australia. We're a lot more reserved. Yanks, they might come across as arrogant or whatever it might be, but they do win in business, and you've got to play that game.
The other thing I've noticed is this: watching you at a conference, you will walk around with a keen, like you're curious and interested, and you'll walk up to people and talk to anybody. Because you're actually interested.
Ask questions.
You do. You do ask questions, but you ask a lot of questions. So Jake does as well. Jake's great at this. So you can go to events, but I think a lot of people still waste time there. They don't actually go get the cards, because Americans still handing out cards. Defence was still handing out business cards.
Defence loves cards.
They love cards.
I've actually enjoyed having cards again, because coming from normal tech venture, cards are just like alien. Yeah. Back from my pipe days, we used to do a lot of functions, a lot of getting potential customers together. Then bringing staff down and getting to talk. And, it was known. I would warn people for dismissal if they were caught at a function talking to each other, staff talking to each other. When you go to a conference, it's time. Oh, my God, you go to a conference, you spend all day at a conference listening to these people drone on. You need to derive value. A lot of times as a part of my intro when I talk, it's like, I just hope I can give you some value. I know how important time is to entrepreneurs. So I want to try and just derive value, and I've found over the time question answer is the best value, because people just want to know certain things, whereas droning on with the keynote speech, it's actually they can all be a fifth the size they are, to be honest. You just want to do Q&A. So you've got to go there, ask questions, go around. If you're there anyway and you think it's a boring conference, you've got nothing else to do, why not just go and learn something? It could be something I was at AUSA last year, which is massive. I think I did about 20,000 steps an hour and walk around that place only once in like 4 days. A lot of things I had no interest in, but I thought, well, I've got this, I probably went too long. I'm going to go half the amount of time this time. And I thought, well, I'm going to stop and ask about this anyway, because I don't know. So you're there. You've made the decision to spend the time, but by God, go the extra step and actually spend the time and get value. Otherwise, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. So I do notice that about you, not only at conferences, but you're probably one of the most relentless people that I've ever met. So when you get an idea about something, you will just hunt it down. And I know
then I just pass it to you to take care of it, right?
Well, then you've got to have the executors and implementers for sure. But in terms of that mindset, it is, you don't see it too often in terms of that hunger, the interest, the relentlessness, the ability. And we're not saying go and work 1,000 hours and burn yourself out. There is going to be times like that, but the interest level, I think, is missing. What do you think there when you look at founders in terms of that level of curiosity, the hunger to go and find it, solve the problem, do the thing?
Look, defence is interesting. So there's a lot of, because of the previous funding mechanisms of defence in Australia, it's produced a lot of things that I see as opportunities to fix that will help the sector as well as help our investors. So, it's been funded primarily through these non-dilutive grants. So there's one pot of gold. I call it funding via Hunger Games,
Yes.
right? So the guy who makes the mini submarine thinks it's competing against the guy making the little missile because they're both vying for the same pot of gold. So and they all hate each other, to be honest. They're sort of friendly, but behind closed doors, you all know, I've never heard the most foul language about each other in my life. It's actually, the tech venture community is too sickly sweet and love each other too much. These guys hate each other. They both could meet in the middle somewhere,
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned. Still retain competition, but do it a bit better. I had a bigger point that I just red herring myself.
In terms of the relentlessness.
Yeah. So,
to solve.
And a lot of times what happens is you'll actually get, and this is what annoys me about the Australian Defence Force, you'll get they'll be offered these little carrots, sort of say, well, it's great you've built this thing. We just want it modified. Okay, that's cool. Now, and that's enough, and it's not a bad contract, okay? So you can work for maybe a year or two, and you may put a few more engineers on. But at the end of that, is there budget at the end of it? And if it does, they might buy 7, right? In the US, they're going to buy 700. That's the reality, if you know what I mean. I find people are lulled into a warm blanket, like a warm, soft sort of fireplace, and they can just relax a bit when they start getting some traction with the ADF. And it's just like it's such a small market, and I want the ADF to change. I hope they can actually do things better, faster, and all the rest. I see no signs it's the case.
So the mentality of defence, everything you just explained, is quite different from the other normal tech startups or the ecosystem that we've seen. People like Palmer Luckey, Andrew, are highlighting what's possible to do it differently. Is that what's going to be needed here in Australia to shift the dial or change the game? Or do we just need more companies doing more to highlight what's possible, to embarrass them into action? In
the US, you're blessed with a lot of people who stepped down into defence or sideways into defence from previous careers. Palmer was one. Singleton has a great term. He calls them the ablative billionaire. Mm-hmm. So it's a billionaire who doesn't mind throwing off a few $100 million to start another business, if you know what I mean, until he gets some traction.
Yes.
So we're not blessed with very many ablative billionaires in Australia, unfortunately. The ones we do have are not in the tech sectors, unfortunately. They're more in extraction and real estate, in that a great business. So what needs a change in Australia? I'll come back to, I don't think we're going to lead this. It's a $35 billion defence budget, on 32, whatever it is, no more than $35 billion. The US alone has just hit $1 trillion. Europe's at $0.5 trillion. They're massive markets everywhere else. So, and as well, the Australian Defence Force, quite sensibly, has a strategy for how to defend Australia, as you should. I think was it Sun Tzu who says that the tactics without strategy is just noise before defeat.
Yep.
So you need a strategy, and their strategy is we're basically turning the Australian Army into the US Marine Corps. We're going to go occupy the Fort Islands, that is, countries north between here and China, and we're going to put forces ashore with really long-range missiles just to really complicate the hell out of anyone who wants to sail a ship towards us, which is a great strategy. It's very viable. But that's a really small set of requirements. You need landing boats, you need troops, you need some missiles. Everything else is sort of gone, right? Whereas, if you were to combine the strategies of the US, Australia, the NATO countries, for example, you'd find that there's 15 times as many areas of defence in there. So there's more room. It's not only is it deeper in terms of capital, in terms of spend, but it's wider in terms of capability. So Australia's always going to have a very narrow focus. And so everyone's sort of trying to compete into that focus. And then when the government shifts, it's quite a vicious shift. They're not shifting inside something this wide. They're shifting the entire thing that way.
Yeah.
So there's daylight between where they were and where they're going. And you're left carrying the bucket, I suppose, for where it was. So hence it has to be exported. It's richer. Like the AUKUS situation is good. There's been a lot of liberalisation of export controls and target restrictions, which is the regulations around how cross-border defence stuff happens, and there's a lot more to it than that. I know you'll send me emails, I'm wrong, but it's the general regulations around export and technology controls in defence have had a lot of liberalisation. Is it perfect? No, but it's a hell of a lot better than what it was. And there's no such thing as perfect, so give up on perfect. So it's a great time. In the US, Doug Beck, the head of the Defence Innovation Unit in the US, end of last year, said that there's 265 different organisations, like the DoD, that have what they call other transaction authority. That's the ability. It's like low doc purchase ability, so you can buy without a tender. I'm being exceptionally generous there. Now I don't know how many of those survive Doge, right? I would imagine it's probably triple digits still. It's probably well over 100. In Australia, there's 6 or 7 who can do that. I mean, it's very, very low count, right? So, is the US DoD easy? No, it's easier. It's like when we talk to normal startups and say, a lot of the capital and a lot of the talent resides in Silicon Valley. And everyone goes there expecting it to be easy. But it's all there, but everyone's competing for it.
Yeah.
So you have this
work hard for it still.
hyper vibrant market. Yeah. So you've still got and you've got to compete like hell. You're in the world's richest market, but against the world's best entrepreneurs. So yeah, good luck
and
with
hungry.
that. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things changing in defence, and one of them is the Brave One marketplace. Do you want to sort of explain that and how that might change the landscape?
So I think it definitely is. So Brave One was an initial Ukrainian Department of Defence reaction to the Russian invasion in February 2022. It was around getting innovation into the Defence Department, into their Defence Department. That morphed, there's been a lot of morphing. I mean, talk about a pivot. There's nothing like a war to force pivots, I suppose.
Rapidly, yeah.
And May 2025, depending on the listen to this, it became known that they'd had something called the Brave One marketplace. So it's essentially Temu for war things to fight the Russians. And I'm being very generalistic here. So no longer and it was available to most stratas of the Ukrainian army on the contact line, so those facing the opposition essentially. So literally like probably a corporal or captain with mud in his boots in a Ukrainian trench could go onto this marketplace with his phone, could order a drone using dollars he was allocated centrally from the Ukrainian government, and have that delivered to his trench. He could then use that. If it didn't work, he could give a 1-star rating, as you do. But no one likes a 1-star rating. So before you give a 1-star rating, you always email them saying, hey, this didn't work. And the guy who sells it doesn't want the 1-star rating. So he goes, right, wait a sec, I'll fix it and send you 6 more. Right? And then you get the 4-star rating because it works. So that's a feedback loop, right?
Yep. Rapid feedback.
A rapid feedback. And that would take...
public, yeah.
So prior to probably 22 in Australia, that would take a decade.
Yes.
It's probably now only taking 6 years, right? So we're getting better. In Ukraine, it's weeks, maybe months, probably weeks. They went one step further. So they said, right, we should have gamification as well. So you have a concept of in-game currency. So through another system the Ukrainians have called Delta, I believe, which is their battle management solution, you as a Ukrainian warfighter, when you execute a mission, you blow up a Russian tank, for example. If you have video available that, you actually submit that so the headquarters can understand what they call BDA, battle damage assessment. Is that tank destroyed or is it just merely crippled? Can we go and steal it? It's only got one track blown off. Can we go and... They do that all the time. They steal tanks. So I thought, well, if we do this, why don't we actually start awarding points? So let's say 40 points for a tank. I think it's 60 points for a missile launcher. And with those points, when you go back to the Brave One store, you can either use dollars or you can use points that you've accumulated. So when you start thinking about the incentive and the feedback loop here, it's actually quite terrifying. It's actually the biggest revolution in military logistics since centralised military logistics. It's probably decentralising military logistics now if I think through it hard enough.
How accessible is this?
Well, to the point, I'll go from the car bit here. So maybe mark this part in your tape because you might not put this in. But essentially that they ran the experiment because they also have a point score for a Russian KIA. So if you have a confirmed a Russian soldier killed in action, which was 2 points, I believe, they tripled it to 6. And within a short period of time had double the number of KIAs being reported. So as Charlie Munger from Berkshire Hathaway, God rest his soul, says, show me the outcome and I'll show you the incentive. So that's a definitely that. So that's to the point where the Ukrainians also publish league tables of the units who are destroying the most equipment per week. And so it becomes a competition. But you think about it, you get the best gear from the marketplace to destroy more equipment, to get more points, to buy better gear from the marketplace. And so it's this self-reinforcing loop. Everyone's incentivized to do the right thing. The manufacturers are incentivized, the units are incentivized. It's a marketplace.
Who has access?
Ukrainian soldiers.
Okay.
You can. There's certain view-only portals that you can get, and plenty of people.
But you have to be in defence. It's not
you have to be holding a rifle facing a Russian in Ukraine. If you're now, I believe there are Australians doing that. That's technically illegal under Australian law. But it's a Ukrainian defence. It's part of their intranet, I suppose, one of a better term.
Right.
Yeah.
So seeing this play out and what's possible, what do you see? Is that paving a pathway, highlighting what's possible?
It is. So just this week. So I had a week off. Actually, it might have been last week, but I saw it this week. This being August 2025. Yes. The US had released, or one part of the USDAD had released a web platform where units could order certain types of pre-authorised drones, for example, and suppliers could put them on there at the same time. So they're definitely putting their toe in the water. Now, what you've got with the new US administration, love them, hate them, forget politics, you've got an exceptionally young man leading the show being Pete Hegseth, who's an amazing communicator, right? And he also was a warfighter, a very recent warfighter. So, that's not bad. And he is willing to take risks. You've seen that there's now 5... There's at least 4 executive orders and one other order that's come through around shipbuilding, around program delivery, around software, around drones and one other as well. So very, I suppose, logistical game changers inside the US DoD. So, hey, they're trying. This is what startups do, right? It doesn't work. Stop it. And if it's not working, doing anything else could be better.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. So just try something else, right? And but they're taking obviously the intelligent bets as you should do with a pivot. Yet to know if it works, but they're I think they're starting to get on the clue train.
I was just about to say, recently you wrote a piece called "The Clue Train Goes to War."
There was a book, it was a series of thesis, I believe, that was loosely published and then turned into a book around 99 or 2001, called The Clue Train Manifesto. And so it's about, hey, the clue train's leaving the station, get on board. It was imploring companies to participate in conversations with customers through marketplaces, through bulletin boards, people leaving, because a lot of companies didn't want to go onto those there because their customers were basically telling them their product sucked.
Yeah, so they didn't want to see it. They wanted to pretend it's not happening.
Exactly right. They thought a better strategy was to ignore it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So whereas like, hey, don't do that. These marketplaces, these things are marketplaces of ideas. If you're not participating,
for the feedback loop.
Yep, your competitors are at the same time, right? So there was a bunch of stuff in there around hyperlinks, the ability for hyperlinks to subvert hierarchy. So this is definitely a brave one. Like literally, why go through the hierarchy of defence acquisition where you can just go to the website and grab it.
Straight
away. Get your URL and your hyperlink and get it. When I saw that brave one, I just thought, man, this is so clue train. They've almost picked this book up and gone, dude, I have to do this, right? And in essence, it's just the culmination of modern business e-commerce techniques have actually found their way into military logistics.
Yes.
Which is, it's a shame, probably sort of, a million or so young men on both sides have the data to get to that point. So, yeah.
And looking to the next 12 months, what do you see, where do you see Beaton's own venture partners in the next 12 months?
Next 12 months. So we're having a great year. So we've done our fourth and fifth investment, rapid succession, done another follow-on. We've got 2 or 3 we're eyeing off to finish the year. Businesses we really like, not sure they'll need the investment, not sure they'll take it from us at the same time. So we're working on them. We invest in Australian businesses who sell to the allied market. So we have to, at least once or twice a year, at least head to that allied market and understand who's doing stuff over there. So I'm going to Poland. There's a big show in Kelsey, just to our south of Warsaw at the start of September. I'm heading over for that. And then the week after, there's a show called DSEI in London, which they're back to back, which is very fortunate. So there's that for me. We have our hackathon next week, Peter, a week after. Next week, thank you. 20-something, 22nd, Friday, 22nd of August, thank you. TAC Hack, so that's going to be great. So TAC is, this all started out from concept of something I call Boomfest, which didn't, which we didn't proceed with.
It was one of those very big Steve ideas, and Peter's brought it back to something that.
Well, we didn't quite proceed with it because there were numerous logistical challenges. So I thought, let's just go to every person who makes it.
Insurance challenge.
Let's just
find the compliance person of the business. I felt that was going to be quite.
Let's just find someone's dirty big cattle property, invite them with a drone out there, and just to fly some sort of challenge and see what we can do.
I can't do enough good PR to make that one work.
And we boiled that down into a 3-day hackathon, which is great. So it's a hackathon startup weekend type format. You're starting on a Friday afternoon, going through a Sunday afternoon. We have a few little meet and greets on Friday. We have some pitches. We form teams, then work on ideas. So what is TAC? So TAC is something called Tactical Awareness Kit.
Team Awareness Kit.
Team Awareness Kit. I call it tactical.
That's very tactical as well.
Yeah. So it's essentially like a mobile phone that a soldier sort of wears on their chest. And they look around, they get situational awareness, they can see maps and drone feeds and other bits and pieces, So a human-machine interface for a soldier or an operator. First responders. There's civil defence versions as well. So there's something called FireTAC, CivTAC, PolTAC, as well as TAC. It's a US Army, US Air Force, AFWorks, US Air Force Works piece of IP originally. So sort of been open sourced to a degree. And so we're using that as a platform to say, come down and let's pitch some ideas around what you can do with this, what we can interface, and how you can do cool things around TAC, because it's quite an accessible software platform. So that'll be good. We do that to, because we like to understand who's who in the communities. That draws people out. It draws out not just people who might want to participate in defence technology, but also organisations who want to support.
And to show what's possible in a really short period of time.
Yeah.
Right? So for innovation, that rapid loop.
Rapid pace, yeah. Yep. So that's in 22nd, 23rd, 24th, I want to say, of August. In October, November is, thank you, Indo-Pac. I'm sure it's in my calendar. Have a good EA. She'll put me towards a plane when I have to go there, and I'll go. Yeah. So the big Indo-Pacific Naval Conference in Sydney, we're doing a pitch day. Arkeus Pillar 2 pitch fest, which will be good. We're also doing a Breach Point. Breach Point is Peter mentioned before, is our event where we get a panel of experts on how to enter the US. The thing about going into the US market is the business language is alien to an Australian. I suppose Australia is a very, very federated market. So we have a strong federal government with 7 states. In the US, they have a federal government with 50 states. Every state has its own version of ASIC, has its own version of an ATO, has its own version of a telecommunications regulator, has their own version of everything, essentially. So it's actually a constitutional republic, and that's how they view it. There's 9,700 taxation jurisdictions in the US. And Australians hear that and think it's a bug. Americans hear that and consider it a feature. It means you can locate your business in the tax region that best suits what you do. So, American businesses are very portable. As a result, the jurisdictions, they have a lot of schemes to attract business, and so there's a lot of incentives to do business in the US at a state or a county or city, depending level. But when you hear Americans talk about it, the terms just don't line up in your head, and as an Australian, you just sit there and go, what the hell did that person just say?
There's a lot to navigate. There's a lot to understand. So you need those connections there.
Yeah, so the connections, it's just that the entry level, it's worth doing, right? But so don't be scared off by this custard skin of what looks like difficultness. It's a custard skin. You pull it off and you're in, right? Just don't be scared by the custard skin. So it's that easy to remove. So, and Breach Point's all about that, about giving people the courage, a little bit of just enough information to maybe get on, take that flight, head to Austin.
And show it's possible.
Yeah, dead right.
So that'll take us to the end of the year. And then, so for going back to the question of in 12 months' time, where we'll be.
Well, we're looking to close the fund by the end of this year. We have to close it legally in August next year. So we're still open for fundraising at this point in time. But I'd like to get it closed by this year. I think that's how, my current intention, and intentions are good because they can change anytime you want. I love an intention. The intention is to probably get it closed this year and then look at other funds. So, in the sort of verticals and sort of areas, I'm very still... So our family is doubling down on national security as an investment theme, to be honest. I've got lots of permission for that, which is lovely. So we're looking at other ways that we can participate in the ecosystem. I don't like that. This is a business out to make money for investors. So we're looking for other ways in order to actually get access to opportunities in this space. I'm an LP, for example, in the US Veteran Fund, which is a fund that a couple of two great chaps and a lovely lady raised in the US, and they invest in veterans, not necessarily in national security space, although a lot are. Just
the veteran businesses.
Yeah. Veteran-owned businesses, yeah. That's done very well, actually, to be honest. They've actually got a competitor to one of our businesses in our portfolio, which is pretty funny, so I've got to close my eyes on that one and ask them not to send me the information. And so maybe an Australian veteran fund makes a little bit of sense, to be honest. So because a lot of people separating from the armed services.
Yeah, that's
I think dedicated space, is really, really quite fascinating. And then I think looking at some of those larger opportunities in our pipeline that we probably can't participate in because they're raising, like one's raising 250 million, another's raising 30 million. That's outside of our boundaries. So maybe a growth fund at the same time. So there's lots of opportunities. So, whilst I set out to raise $60 million and I'm at 12.6, not quite 60 as it turns out.
But then you've also just mentioned 3 other opportunities where you're going to go in different directions.
Yeah.
Because you don't slow down. So there is probably one place you do slow down. I hear that you've got your own version of the Clarkson's Farm era.
I'm not making a TV show about it, but I've got.
I was going to say, is that going to be next? The cameras are going to follow you out to your farm?
I hope not. I bought a farm out southwest of Brisbane, which is lovely. It's 57 kilometres from Brisbane. I still can't believe I own 420 acres of land, 57 kilometres.
And
that exists.
It
57
does.
kilometres.
And it's beautiful out there.
It's gorgeous out there, yeah. So it must have been a wet year, right? If it was a drought year, probably
so
quite terrible. So
you got bogged a few times?
Yeah, a couple of times.
So you mentioned there's a possibility of maybe you thinking about taking on a co-founder.
Yeah, a series of co-founders. I mean, the opportunity in the national security space in Australia, I'm quite confident there's a lot more to it. And so we spoke about, I like space. I think there's an opportunity for a dedicated space fund. At the moment, when we look at our portfolio construction, we look at the 5 domains of defence, which are sea, air, land, space and cyber. And then you look at hardware and software as different return sort of modifiers to that. So we think about how we construct a portfolio around those things. Space is an important one there. So there's a lot to space. There's where I'm from the telco game, originally from the telco game from 94 and through when I sold the business in 2010. And to me, where space is now feels like when I started my first business and we had 14.4K modems. And we're now at gigabit to the house.
Yes.
If you know what I mean. So I feel we might be at 28.8K, but we're not at, we have so much more to go in space. So to me, space is quite exciting. I need to put more around that to go and talk to investors other than my gut feel, which is, not the most professional way you can do it, but there's that opportunity.
So you're
I think there's
saying if you set something up dedicated to space, you'd be looking at somebody else who from the space sector or someone else is interested or experienced?
Well, very much so. Getting out there and advertising and trying to understand, backing that person into a fund as a part of a GP, for example. Okay, so that would be one way to do it, and then all the way down to just being an old employee at the same time and having a card that says co-founder, which is a little bit disingenuous, but that's how it's done a lot of the times. The other area I really like is I'm actually a GP in the the other area I like is I'm actually an LP in the US Veteran Fund, and that's a fund that backs businesses run by veterans, and I think there's capacity for that in Australia as well.
That's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, so there could be one potential space there at one area at the same time, so that's got a lot to it. Also in and around growth, so the growth metrics, as a lot of these businesses grow and they go from needing checks of $500,000 to $3 million to needing checks of $10 to $50 million. So I think there's a good capacity to get in that growth sector. It's a different type of company, it's a different type of investor, it's a different type of return. So there's opportunity there. So very, very keen and happy to double down that. So to that, I'm very keen to get out there and we'll start a campaign, and we're starting a campaign to advertise for co-founders. I call them, we can call them, other partners, or it might be co-partners, co-founders. I don't really know. I don't really care to a degree other than what it speaks to the person. So
obviously they've got to have complementary skill sets to you.
Yeah, look, I mean...
or a domain-focused interest.
Yeah, look, I think you can only be involved in so many funds at once. If you know what I mean, be very careful not to bite too much off. That you could take an overbearing chairman role, an overarching chairman role, who might also be overbearing. You know me, Pete, I could be overbearing. So that
was my next question: is who can work with you?
We'll find out, won't we? Let them talk about Hunger Games.
Are you okay
talk about Hunger Games.
Are you okay sharing the decisions? No, actually...
Am I okay sharing the decisions, Peter? We've worked together now for 13 years. Am I okay sharing the decisions?
As long as they're your
Come on,
decisions,
your job's in the line, it's all good. Right?
They're your decisions.
And I've worked with one organisation in Australia called Wandering Warriors. They're a special forces charity. I actually supported one of their charity. They a bunch of ex-SAS guys who thought to raise money, they walked to Birdsville from Brisbane. Only an SAS guy would do that. But anyway, so I helped them on that charity thing, and I sort of stayed in contact ever since. And a chap there called Quentin Masson, who actually runs MBA programs for separating service members who want to get into MBA, into business.
Yep.
So there's that thread there, I suppose. And there's just a lack of people. I mean, if I was to overly characterise the Australian investment scene, it's a private school boy who loves rugby union. And actually, that's actually an accurate description, to be honest. And I hate rugby union. I don't know why we think. We're not good at rugby union. We haven't been good at it.
Or they're ex-founders.
It's Australia's 11th most popular participation
now.
sport.
I think you're generationally going to see some other people come through.
I think so. Look, with the successful exits, especially out of Sydney, in around that cluster, a bit more in Brisbane now as well, and Melbourne, founders come out and start their own funds, which is good.
So you might get different mentalities coming through.
But they're also still, they don't naturally flock to defence.
No.
So, I mean, we have seen a good example of that with Vu Tran from Go One, to be honest, but for the most part, and a couple of others who've approached me and said, "Shh, I can't tell you this," which is, I understand their predicament, but I'm annoyed by the lack of bravery at times. At the same time, so but I do understand the predicament. So look, there's capacity out there on all sides of this, but I think in order to, why don't we have that strata of really hyper capable individuals who've gone through that sort of really quite, gone through a set of training and usually a set of experiences in the last 10 years as well.
Yeah.
That would bring some definite additions to these firms. I'd like to explore that as a theme along the way. I'm a huge fan of businesses, not charities. The first way you and I met was a not-for-profit, River City Labs, which was very successfully not-for-profit, never made a profit. I never want that ever again. So this is about business. I'm quite mercenary in that. I think that the better we can do, the more money we can make, the more good we can do. We can just keep recycling that flywheel around.
So if anyone's interested in it's generated a bit of an interest or a few questions around maybe getting involved in any of those things you mentioned, whether it be space or future potential in collaborating, are you open to people reaching out to you directly?
Oh, very much so. Yep. Click the website here. Can you do that? I'm sure we'll include it in the comments or something somewhere.
There's enough details out there to get in touch with any one of us. I'm sure that it'll make it to you somehow.
We'll do it in a structured way.
Or they could just tweet you because you're quite responsive on Twitter.
Oh, I go ups and downs on Twitter, to be honest. So, the busier we get at work, the less I tend to tweet. You can probably track my Twitter, unless there's some dumb referendum on. I've been off it lately. It makes you feel pretty good.
That's probably really good. I'm really glad you said that.
So, look, overall, out to look for other people to help us lead the national security investing space in Australia. Even to the point of view of, why do I have the good ideas? Why don't you come to, if you seen something out there you think is good, come to me with your idea, come and pitch me. Let's understand that. If you think you can make $1 from it and you can convince us, then we might back you. So I just think it's the field is vacant. It's a great time to get in there.
Great. Hopefully we find some good people.
There you go.
Well, Steve, I think we will wrap it up there. We'll end on the farm. Easy. Thanks for joining us in the briefing room. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with the people shaping our national security and future capability. If you liked what you heard, please follow the show, share it with a friend, and join us next time for more stories and insights from the front lines of innovation. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep building the future.